right, we are recording, so hopefully this records the video. All right, we have a lot to talk about today. We are doing ecology. You started your packet on it. It really kind of highlights a lot of the key things. So a lot of this is just repetitive that you've already seen in your packet. It's not complex, but we are going to go fast. The first thing with ecology is we really talk about two things. When we look at ecosystems, we focus on the movement of energy, and we focus on the movement of matter. How does energy move through a system? Where does the energy come from that moves through a system? Comes from light. Comes from producers. So most of it comes from light. Do we have some chemosynthetic bacteria out there? Yes, we have some chemosynthesis as well, but the energy in our ecosystem all comes from the sun. All right. Do we send energy back to the sun? No. Do plants get energy from animals? No. No, they get nutrients. They get phosphorus, nitrogen, matter, but they do not get energy. Therefore, energy flows through ecosystems. From producers to consumers, does not cycle back. Matter, on the other hand, cycles through ecosystems. Right? Matter is recycled. We do not create or destroy matter. Right? So therefore, the matter that comprised our plants, the proteins, the carbohydrates that make up our plants, are then eaten by animals. That's where we get our material to build our muscles, to build our bones by consuming plants, other animals. Right? When we die, what happens? We decompose. Those nutrients go back to the soil, be reabsorbed by plants. So energy flows through ecosystems. Matter cycles. Everybody okay with that first big idea? Easy enough? Okay. Couple key things. We're talking about ecology. When we look at ecology, we're looking at environmental relationships. We're looking at abiotic factors and biotic factors. What is an abiotic factor? Ernesto, what is an abiotic factor? Temperature, something that's non-living. So temperature is an abiotic factor. The amount of rain, precipitation, winds, right? You could be kind of a rocky soil versus, a rocky base versus a sand base, like different types of things like that. But it's abiotic, non-living factors. We can talk about aquatic ecosystems, salinity levels, dissolved oxygen, so forth. Biotic factors. Kevin, what are biotic factors?
Things that live on.
Don't get so anymore. Things that live. Oh. There you go. Things that live are biotic factors. So all the organisms, the animals, right? What about driving to work today? I was on Palisades Park, right? And there was a dead deer in the side of the road. Is it biotic or abiotic? It is biotic, so it's living or once living. It's living tissues that are being decomposed. So an organism that died that's being reabsorbed into the environment is biotic. All right, now some things we're going to look at. We're going to look at key interactions between biotic factors such as symbiosis, competition, predator-prey relationships. And some examples of symbiosis are parasitism, mutualism, commensalism. We'll get back to those in a while. Everyone okay? Good. All right. All right, so again, abiotic are non-living components. Biotic are living components. All the organisms living in the environment would be called the biota. We also can kind of break it down into flora and fauna. Flora being plants, fauna being animals. I'm not really giving you time to take notes here because these are notes that you should kind of have in your packet. So we're going quick. Plus, I'm recording this for you. All right. Abiotic factors, right? Temperature, amount of sunlight, precipitation. Right? All of these are abiotic factors. What is, and we'll go back. Is everybody okay with abiotic factors? Easy enough? Good. Climate. Climate is made up by the abiotic factors. Right? Climate is the long-term weather patterns. If you look outside, you don't see climate, you see weather. If you measure the weather over longer periods of time, you can get a picture of climate. So climate is long-term weather. Temperature, wind, water, light. We can have macroclimates. We're very used to looking at macroclimates. That's what we talk about. That's what the news is talking about. Macroclimates, climates on a larger scale. However, there are microclimates as well. Climates that... Hello? Yes. No problem. Oh, man. Kevin went to attendance. So we also have microclimates, though. We've actually talked about this before, enzymes. Remember enzymes? They can create their own little microenvironments. Right? So the climate can be on a small scale as well. Underneath the rock can be its own individual climate. Underneath the rock can be its own little individual climate. Climate is really what drives all of our biomes. It's what drives the diversity of our world. What is the driving force of climate, though? What's the key factor in creating different climates? So what's the key factor in driving our weather patterns? What's the key factor in driving the wind? Sun. It all goes back to the sun. Our weather is primarily driven by the sun, because the sun causes all these heating and cooling processes. The sun is what causes our wind patterns. The sun is what causes our ocean currents. Why? Well, where do we have the highest intensity sunlight? Where? The equator. So at the equator, we get the greatest amount of heat, energy transfer from sun to our environment. Why? Because it's the most direct sunlight. Where do we have the least amount of energy transfer? Or the South Pole or the North Pole. All right, Andrew, I've been waiting to do this all year. Come on up. What it is, it's simply the angle of light. Right? At the equator, sunlight is hitting at a 90-degree angle. How many people have done a little bit of physics in here? F equals ma, right? Force equals mass divided by acceleration, right? And then it's a little bit more than that because it's also times the sine of theta. And what that means is if you apply a force in a 90-degree angle, you're applying the maximum amount of that force. So if I'm applying 100 or say 10 newtons of force, and I apply it at 90 degrees, I'm applying the maximum amount of force in that direction. If I apply 10 newtons of force at an angle, not all 10 newtons of force is going in the same direction. We're not splitting the two directions, kind of like vectors, x and y components. All right. At the equator, sunlight is supposed to be hitting at about 90 degrees, which means we have the maximum amount of transfer. That would be like me punching Andrew directly in the chest, directly in the chest as hard as I can, transferring all of that force. At the poles, though, it would be like me taking a wild swinging blow and just kind of glancing across his chest. Right? Not all that force is being transferred. Some of that light is hitting at a. I thought you had a less angle. You're good. Yeah. You can sit down. All right. So the driving point of all of our climate, it really comes from the sun. Our wind patterns, we have warm air rising at the equator, cold air sinking at the poles, right? And we have a couple different wind patterns. It's not the equator and the poles interact. There's actually a couple interactions in between. But you can kind of get the idea, right? Warm air rises, cold air sinks. Right? If warm air rises, cold air sinks, we get circulation. and those circulations what drives our wind pattern. Same thing with the ocean, right? Water heats up in the Caribbean, and it comes up the East Coast and travels all the way up into the North Atlantic. Without that current, the North Atlantic would be far colder, right? Because we wouldn't have that warm water being brought up to the North Atlantic. So what drives all this? What drives our wind patterns? What drives our ocean currents? It really comes down to light. Light is what drives the energy coming from the sun. Okay, now, the reason why we're talking about this is because climate dictates biomes. We have a number of different biomes. I'm actually going to skip forward one, but climate has a great impact on the distribution of organisms as seen on a climate graph. So this is a climate graph here, just simply looking at temperature and precipitation being graphed. So here I can see deserts. Deserts have a high temperature, but they have low precipitation. Temperate grasslands still have fairly high temperatures with a little bit more precipitation. Tropical rainforests have high temperatures and high precipitation as well. And then you get down into Arctic tundras, right? We have cold temperatures, low precipitation, and coniferous forests, temperate forests. You kind of see where they kind of see how they're spaced out. This graph, in this graph, are really doing the same thing. This one's a little bit clearer to see the trends. So they're showing the same thing. Here is we're looking at moisture, so decreasing moisture. Here we're looking at temperature. Right? You kind of see rainforests and deserts. If we were to split the temperatures, it wouldn't tell us much. We wouldn't be able to really differentiate between the two because they both have fairly warm temperatures. What differentiates the rainforest and the deserts is really the amount of moisture in the environment. It's why the desert during the day might be 100, 110, 120 degrees. At night, it could drop down to 30 degrees, 35 degrees. Where the rainforest, right, it might be 80, 90 degrees. It might feel extremely hot. But at night, does the temperature drop dramatically? Why not? Because there's a lot of moisture and water has a high what? Specific. Oh, I think we had it at the beginning of the year. Specific heat. Specific heat is the amount of energy needed to raise the temperature of water. Water has a really, really high specific heat. So it takes a lot of energy to raise the temperature of water, but water also needs to lose a lot of energy for its temperature to drop back down. Because there's a lot of moisture in the rainforest, it tends to maintain its temperature. So at night, it's almost just as warm as it is during the day. It doesn't cool off that much because there's so much moisture in the environment. Where in the deserts, you have huge swings in temperature because there's not much moisture to hold on to that heat, that temperature. Everyone okay? All right. Biomes. Biomes you should be responsible for, and you should write these down. Hopefully you got some of these when you're doing your biomes. I left it open for you a little bit. Biomes you need to be familiar with. You need to know exact temperatures, exact precipitation values for each of these biomes. So you need to know tropical rainforest. You need to know savanna, desert, chaparral, temperate grasslands, temperate forest or deciduous forest. I'll put that up here. Deciduous forest and coniferous forest and tundra. Those are the ones that you should be familiar with. You don't need to memorize temperatures and precipitation values. As long as you just know tundra is fine, right? Tundras typically have permafrost, right? Very, very cold temperatures, maintain cold temperatures throughout the year. Organisms such as polar bears, mosses, things like that. So again, you don't need to know exact specific values for precipitation or for temperature. But if I give this to you kind of a matching section, you should be able to kind of just Distinguish between them. Yes. Those are fine. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. A coniferous forest could also be known as a taiga.
How is the chaparral? Is it cold?
So a chaparral, it's typically a warmer environment. You get them, if you want to know what chaparral is, think about the Hollywood sign. Kind of that little bit of mountainous, kind of like scrub grass or scrub brush, right? So it's kind of like, it's a desert region, like on the edge of a mountain chain. It's kind of what a chaparral is. So just think of a Hollywood sign. Low precipitation, fairly warm temperatures, scrub grass, scrub brush, things like that. Temperate grassland, temperate broadleaf forest, that's where we are, right? We're a temperate forest. Temperate broadleaf or deciduous forest, meaning that they lose their leaves every year. Everybody okay? Everybody good? All right. I will give you a sec with this. This was not on your packet. This is something a little bit new. You don't need to copy down every word, but you do need to know ecosystem resistance versus ecosystem resilience. All right. Everyone okay? Okay, so ecosystem resistance really goes with diversity. Um, Rainforest has very, very strong resistance to change. Why? Because it's so diverse. There are so many different plants and animals living there that one factor coming into the environment it isn't really enough to throw it off. Just picture having maybe a certain chemical or invasive species coming into that environment. It's going to be hard for that chemical, that invasive species to wipe out the rainforest because there's so much diversity there. They can withstand it. Ecosystem resilience is an ecosystem where once it's wiped out, it bounces back very quickly. So this typically has low diversity. So one of the environments or one of the ecosystems that has high resistance would be a rainforest. A grassland would have very, very low resistance but high resilience. Right? Grasslands actually they benefit from forest fires. When they get burnt out, it just opens up, it fertilizes the soil and opens up more land for grasses to grow. if I were to clear cut a rainforest, right, it has a lot of resistance, but if I were to destroy it, its resilience is very, very poor because it is so complex. Think about it. If I wipe out a rainforest, you think that rainforest is going to pop back in a year or two? No, it's not. It's pretty much done at that point because it was so diverse, it was so complex with all the interactions there. Where grassland, I can wipe it out with a forest fire, and because it's grasses, there really are a ton of species, they can come back very quickly. This also goes along with the concept of R strategists and A strategists. Here, in ecosystems that get wiped out often, the organisms go with more of a boom or bust type reproductive system. Right? They're more of an R strategist reproductive system. So the grasslands are R strategists for the most part. Now, plants produce a lot of seeds, but in comparing plant species, the ecosystem in the rainforest, those plants are a little bit more cage strategists. They're kind of just maximizing their ability to grow and reproduce. Even though if you compare plants to animals tend to be more cage strategists, or higher level animals. We'll talk more about R and K later on. Everybody okay with this? Okay. So that's really your thing on ecosystem, the main part, right? Make sure you know those key biomes. You have a list there. It's not in depth a ton of it. Just be familiar with some of them. We'll do like a little matching quiz kind of going on at some point later this week. Population ecology. So now we're looking at populations. And we're looking to see how populations interact. So what is a population? So a large group of individuals where they can produce viable offspring. Their gene pool is crossing, so therefore they are breeding with one another, so they're living in a similar area. When we look at populations, we look at a number of different things, but we really look at growth rates, right? Whether it's exponential or logistical. That in your packet. But we also look at how they're organized. So two things, right? We look at density, how many organisms we have per unit area, and then we also look at dispersion, how those organisms are dispersed. Bless you. Bless you. Okay. So, patterns of dispersion. Density is easy. High density, low density. We'll talk about density-dependent factors. But dispersion is really kind of grouped into three main types of dispersion: clump dispersion, uniform dispersion, and random dispersion. Clump dispersion is you have organisms that are grouped together. Right? So organisms that are grouped together. So kind of clump dispersion. Uniform dispersion is really when you have organisms kind of trying to maintain spacing between each other. Right? So maintaining spacing between each other. And then random dispersion is the organisms could care less. They're just all over the place. So let's talk about clumped first. Clump dispersion is we have a lot of social activity with animals. So you can think of wolves. You can think of even like the sharks in that last image. Some sharks will kind of group together. Dolphins and pods, or whales and pods. So organisms have some type of grouping mechanism and communication between them. So that is kind of that clump dispersion. There's usually a lot of social interaction, and there's also usually some type of hierarchy within their system, within their unit. Okay? Okay. Uniform dispersion is really when you start getting organisms that are worried about maintaining their territory. So here, although it doesn't look, it looks more like clumps, these penguins are actually protecting their area, their little nest on the ground and their little egg. So they're actually displaying a uniform dispersion because they're protecting their small little territory. You think about birds nesting on a cliff, like maintaining their nest and keeping other birds away from their nest. You could think about a lot of predators, such as a jaguar. Right? A jaguar or a tiger kind of goes through the forest, not like lions. They don't form real hierarchy communities. They're kind of more lone animals. So they spray to maintain their territory. So jaguars kind of do this. Tigers do this. So these types of organisms. So there's uniform dispersion where they're really kind of maintaining the territory. Okay? Random dispersion is the organisms could care less if they're packed together or if they're far apart. So these are plants. You can think of a lot of plants here. They really don't care. Bacteria really don't care. Although there's some interaction between plants. So you could argue this, in a few different ways. But we kind of go with the plant concept, and they're showing like the dandelions in the field. How's everybody doing? Okay? All right. So this kind of goes, this is new. This wasn't on your packet, I don't believe, correct? No. But this really goes with the R and K concepts. So you've kind of already read about this a little bit. It goes along with the R and K concept. So I'm actually going to go to this in a second. And we're going to just go forward and just talk about growth rates. With growth rates, right, you had to draw two curves. One curve was exponential growth, showing the continued growth rate going up. The other one was more of a logistical growth rate, which is the red line here. Can environments support exponential growth indefinitely? Because there's always going to be a limitation of resources, right? So exponential growth can occur. It can occur in periods of time. You can picture exponential growth in a bacterial culture growing to fill a petri dish, and it can happen for periods of time. But eventually, there's going to be a limitation of resources. So here we're looking at the elephant population. Just because exponential growth doesn't always have to be bacteria in a very short period of time. Exponential growth can be over long periods of time. The elephant population was growing exponentially. Now, can this happen forever? No. There's not enough space. There's not enough resources. There's not enough water, enough food to support an infinite number of elephants. They consume a lot. They take up space. So this might have occurred for a period of time, but eventually they're going to kind of start maximizing their environment. So they're going to shift away from an exponential growth rate to more of a logistical growth rate. So let's just kind of take a look at it. This was the elephant population, the red. We would be looking at a graph up to about here. So up to about there is represented by this line here because it's showing exponential growth. But what happens at this point? Instead of curving higher and higher up, it starts to shift back to the right. So here, if we're looking at lines, if I were to find the rate at any given point, take the derivative at that point, find the rate. How many people do rates? And you guys do derivatives? So, no. In any case, if I were to draw a line tangent to this point right there, what that ruler would be, I can find the rate of that line right there, correct? The steepness of the line. So that's a certain rate. If I go here, what happened to my line? It got steeper. What's that mean about the rate? The rate increase, right? What car is going faster? A car that goes like this, distance time graph, or a car that goes like this? This is going faster. So now I keep shifting all the way up here, right? I'm tangent to the line, but now when I get to these points, what happens to my line? If I start drawing tangent lines, it starts flattening and flattening and flattening out. Everybody see that? So here we have low growth rate because it's a small population. Population size is increasing, so now I have a very, very high growth rate because I have a lot in the population. It's growing exponentially. At this point here, though, we start having a lack of resources. So here, my growth rate starts to slow again. Everybody kind of see that? Not because they're not producing as many offspring, but the environment can't support all of them. So you get more of them dying off. What do we call this point right here? This kind of black line right there. Start for the C. We call it carrying capacity. Very good. So carrying capacity. I had a carrying capacity. Oh, maybe not. A case. Key things is knowing that that is carrying capacity. So if you do not have that written down, just make sure that you understand what that is. So this line right here is carrying capacity. It's how many organisms that given environment can support. Everybody okay? All right. So that's key. Knowing exponential, knowing logistical, and when you have logistical growth, when you start to approach the carrying capacity, which is saying this environment only has enough resources to support this many organisms. That's all it is. Okay. Let's go back here now. This is not looking at population growth. It's looking at survivorship here. It's a little bit different, okay? So what we have is that's a lifespan. This is when you're first born. This is when you're really old, okay? This is number of survivors. So here, we have a high level of survivorship. All of them are surviving. Almost everybody's surviving. Here, we have a low level of survivorship. A lot of them are dying off. Okay? Now, we have three types of curves. Type 1, type 2, and type 3. We are type 1. If we were to count up the number of human deaths, where do we get the greatest number of deaths? People who are 0 to 5 years old or people who are 80 to 90 years old? Right? A larger percentage of 80 to 90-year-olds are dying than 0 to 5. So therefore, as we go through life, we have high survivorship when we're young. Why? Because we have a lot of parental care. Right? We try to maximize our offspring. Therefore, most of our offspring survive. As we get older, though, organisms tend to die off. So we tend to have lower survivorship when we get older. Mollusks. Do mollusks only have a couple little baby mollusks, a couple little baby clams? They take care of them, they cuddle them, they feed them. No. How many offspring do clams have? Hundreds, if not thousands. I don't know about millions. It's a possibility. I'm not quite sure. But there's a ton. They flood the environment. Therefore, initially in the first year of life, do a lot of those clams, those mollusks die? Yes, so it drops really quickly. And then the ones that survive will kind of get bigger and bigger and bigger, survive over time. Right? You get those big giant clams. So type 1. Would type 1 be more of an R strategist or a K strategist? Type 1. Type 1 is a K. So we are K strategists. The reason why we're K strategists is because we try to maximize our offspring. we have less offspring, right? And we take care of them to ensure their survival. Where type 3 is an R strategist. They don't try to take care of their offspring. They say, hey, listen, let's have thousands and thousands of offspring and see who survives. That's an R strategist. Did anybody kind of figure out where the R and the K come from? They kind of see weird terms. Did anybody notice anything of where they saw the R and the K in your completing the facts? I think I have a slide. I don't think I put the equation in there. Here, I'll put it up for you. Okay. That equation right there? No, you do not need to know this. That equation right there is really what you need to know, right? This is the number of individuals over time. That's population growth. How many individuals you get over time, okay? The R stands for how many individuals are put into the environment by every individual organism. So if R is high, it says the organism puts 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 offspring into the environment. So R is output of offspring. K is what kills off those offspring. So K is the limiting factor in this equation. So here, R is the output. K is the limiting factor. So K is really representing the carrying capacity. R strategists maximize R. They try to flood the environment with as many offspring as they can. Hence, we call them R strategists. K strategists don't have huge swings in numbers. K strategists live next to the carrying capacity. And in essence, K represents that carrying capacity number. How many organisms that environment can support. So you don't need to know that equation, but I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of an insight to where the R and the K come from. Okay, so type 2. Type 1 is more of a K strategist. There's a lot of parental care. There's fewer offspring. These are your higher level mammals. Okay? Type 3 are your R strategists. No parental care. Flood the environment. Oftentimes called boom or bust. Right? They boom. They have huge spikes in numbers and then huge drops in numbers. Type 2 are a little bit different. Type 2 are typically prey animals. Right? Squirrels. They have to look out for predators all of their lives. So when they're young, the baby squirrels can be picked up. Birds are type 2 as well. The baby birds can be picked up. The adult squirrels can be picked up. So they kind of display kind of more of this even survivorship curve, right? They don't really maximize early or later. Because of predation, it kind of just evens out in a sense. Here's another one. That's a weird survivorship curve. It's showing rates of survivorship and then rates of death. Surviving, death. Surviving, death.
It looks like my
surviving, death. Right? It's actually a weird one. It's kind of cool. Those are organisms that have exoskeletons. Insects, lobsters, crabs. The drop is when they do what? Starts with an M. Molts. Exoskeletons. Exoskeletons don't grow with the organism. They have to shed their exoskeletons, shed their shells. when they kind of fill it out. When they shed their shells, you get what you have called a soft shell crab or soft shell lobster. And at those periods of time, the insects or the crustaceans are more susceptible to dying off because they don't have that protective hard shell to protect them. So therefore, they get this kind of, each little drop is a molting period. All right, we're good.